Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video I will be ranking the new 6-star featured crystal champions. The 6 new champions that will wildly become available to the public, because majority of the people do not necessarily, buy Paragon crystals or grind for arenas. And some of the champions in there, are from the time when arenas were pretty much inaccessible as well. But before I do that, I want to give a shout out to Nagase, who actually kind of inspired me to do this video. I was somewhat thinking of doing it before already, because a lot of people asked me which are the best, which are the worst champions, in my opinion, in the new featured crystal. And he made that video. And he's a cool content creator. I do want to give him a shout out. I have subscribed to him for quite a while now. He is growing quite fast, and yeah, I do enjoy his videos a lot, so definitely it's another person worth checking out. He does great champion showcases, and I enjoy his content myself. I do think he's often somewhat too optimistic about his rankings of the champion, because he likes to see the champions in the best light, whereas I typically take my approach as all champions being in competition for our time, attention, and resources, and I come to it from point of view is like, why should you rank this champion up if there are all these other champions? But yeah, definitely still very nice champion showcases, and well worth checking out his videos. So some placements we do agree with Nagase, and some placements I definitely disagree with. What I do agree with is that Sandman, unfortunately, is, in my opinion, currently the weakest champion overall. Because in reality, I do think that he will only have, in his current form, extremely niche use in the game. Somewhere on path 9, perhaps on Alliance War, because he's immune to bleed, poison, and shock effects. So that's quite a lot of immunities there. So that's some hazard shift potential right there. And other than that, he does have one of the strongest heal reversal mechanics in the game. However, in regards of both of those aspects, again, we do have plenty alternatives, and for vast majority of the matchups, there is no particular reason why you should use Sandman over something else. When it comes to Alliance War, for instance, Absorbing Man and a whole bunch of other champions like Kingpins and Ghosts do hazard shift better. Again, it always depends on the matchup, but we do have kind of like more potent alternatives, faster, safer, I would say. And then when it comes to heal reversal, we definitely saw him shine in Battlegrounds Regen meta, when Regen was very, very potent. I even ended up using as a 5-star, but that is purely his heal reverse potential, and there again are plenty of alternatives to him. He is getting a tune-up, so after the tune-up, it is quite possible that my valuation of him might change, because his current biggest problem is that he just doesn't have enough damage. Whether it is level 3 rotation, where his damage output becomes serviceable, but it's just too slow for like 95% of the game modes. And his level 1 and 2 rotations are completely abysmal. Like, there's just no damage. Unless you're reversing regeneration, he is going to be very, very slow and steady type of character. And whether people like to admit it or not, if a champion is slow, that automatically shuts him off from like 90+% of the player base. Because again, no, how often we do long fights? It's like Abyss, right? But you do it once, and new Abyss type of content comes out once every 2-3 years. And like, so ultimately, if a champion is kind of like ramp up with long level 3 rotations, it's hardly ever going to be like demand for it. Not to mention that there might and will probably be better options for that Everest content. For instance, if you need Science Champion for a base, you're still going to go Torch, not Sandman. So yeah, I think at this point, and the way the game looks like right now, it's quite silly to build up champions that have like low damage and very long ramp up. It's just they're automatically kind of done. But that said, again, Kabam is in fact buffing him. Hopefully they do good enough of a job for him to become more viable. And as a character, I like him. He's the type of champion that I do like. There's tons of utility in his kit. There's plenty of immunities, Petrified, Deaccelerate, whole bunch of stuff that I really do like. I just hope that he gets serviceable damage. Damage is the greatest utility of the game. No questions asked. You could give OG Cap America the biggest damage in the game from his base, and he would immediately be the most popular champion in the game if he had the highest damage output in the game. No other build is required. If your damage is high, good enough, you will see people use that champion, even if it's just damage. No matter how many abilities you have, if your damage is not high or fast enough, people are not going to use that champion, regardless of, again, how packed your kit is. So that's where Sandman is. Second champion, at the moment I'm going to put Moondragon, and I will admittedly say I'm not super familiar with Moondragon. I kind of think that I might actually rate her higher should I have more experience from her. She kind of disappeared after arriving. We did see people hype her up, we did see people use her for a bit in like Battlegrounds, but since then, she's not there. She does have several things that I do like about her. For instance, that you can enter your Mind Psionic Charge, Psionic Transcendence mode and pretty much stay there for majority of the fight, stack up a ton of debuffs on the opponent, basically. Again, Despair and Inequity interaction there, and then completely prevent evade for most of the fight. She does have that level 1 charge phasing, burst, unblockable special attacks. That she reminds me in many ways of Black Widow Deadly Origins in a sense. Kind of like with updated flair. A great champion, great damage output, not that much else in his kit, except in Moondragon's case, there's actually more usable things. And there is time and place for these champions, without a doubt. And she, at the very least, is much more viable for day-to-day content, should the necessity for her arise. Her problem, the biggest problem is, I think, that she debuted alongside like Kate not that long after Valkyrie, and skill class is just cleaning the house with those champions. So when you do need to make these choices, you know, unquestionably Kate is the better champion, Valkyrie is the better champion, and Moondragon, albeit absolutely not bad, I think she's perfectly balanced, fine character, is just not up to that level. As a defensive threat, she doesn't really do too much either, and overall, I can see her again being used in some specific Battlegrounds metas. I'm not super sure how much we could potentially see her in Alliance War, but I do believe that once more people do have this champion, she will definitely find people that do like and enjoy her, and she's already like much more viable, valuable pickup for the champions. Next up, I'm going to put Dani Moonstar. So Dani Moonstar, I think, is the third worst or the fourth best character, depending how you look at it. She was very hyped when she came out, without a doubt, with those big yellow numbers that you can do like a perfect ramp up and rotation, and all her party tricks, killing like Nick Fury or switching off Hercules' immortality, and the fact that she had quite high prestige, and the fact that she's the first mutant arriving in the game in a very long time. Now the reality is that she is not the easiest champion to play. That's number one. The number two, what's the best way to explain it? It's whenever I personally, and it might be user error, I might be a bad player or whatever else. Whenever I end up using Dani, it always just feels a bit too tight in terms of all the timing. Especially her rotation being level 1, level 2, with these illusion, falter, kind of like ramp up necessities. It always feels like as soon as AI doesn't cooperate with you, as soon as something goes slightly wrong, as long as you can make one mistake, your plan goes out of the window, your damage output disappears, and the fight just goes bad. And I think she is a good champion. I just think that slow passive duration should be increased, because at the moment you can pretty much maintain that slow with full uptime only if you exclusively throw your level 1s. If you want to do her full damage rotation at level 1, level 2, that slow is going to go away and it's going to come bite you back in your bottom at times. Similarly speaking, with the energy vulnerability, it seems like 30 seconds is like a very long time, but when in fight, actually, again, when you need to bait out opponents' special attacks, perhaps play around the node, you often just end up running out of that energy vulnerability uptime before you throw your level 2. Neural arrows as concept as cool as it is, just don't seem to have quite enough uptime either, especially because they are dependent on your ability to switch off Nick Fury, which is kind of like one of the bigger downfalls of the character as well, because she was advertised as like this super fast Nick Fury killer, and she is, if everything goes perfect. The problem is when it doesn't. Because if you kill Nick Fury like too fast with your level 2 before your Neuroshock arrows apply, he's gonna enter second life. Problem is, if Nick Fury throws a level 1 in the fight and he can't miss anymore, then there's another whole problem there happening, because if he bypasses miss, then your ramp up kind of goes away. You can't really build up your Neuroshock arrows because Nick Fury can't miss, and then you can't even apply them to try and prevent the second life. So that's kind of my problem with Dani. I think she would be much better champion than she is right now if Kabam decides to tune her up. They do need to do something with the whole neural arrow thing against Nick Fury, because again, they don't have enough uptime to ensure that you have these arrows active when you are about to kill Nick Fury. So if anything, I would recommend reducing the duration drastically, reducing the damage drastically, but increasing the duration by a very significant amount, just to make sure that if you do land that special attack, those neural arrows stay there for a long time. And increase the duration of the slow, increase the duration of energy, vulnerability, passive. I think are the things that would make her significantly better. As it turns out, again, super hype champion, can be very good if everything goes great, but it often doesn't. And when it doesn't go great, her damage output drops off the cliff, because it's highly reliant on your special attack damage, highly reliant on you having all the prowesses, on you having that energy vulnerability active and all that other stuff. And it's just not the most practical thing to put together in kind of challenging fights at all times. Moving on, Adam Warlock. I made a guide on Adam Warlock yesterday where I pretty much explained exactly how I feel about him. And the truth is, I like him as a champion, but he's nowhere near as good as he was initially hyped, and I myself initially thought he could be. There are many cool things about him. The fact that you can spend most of the fight unblockable, or a bunch of other stuff. But reality is, again, as I explained before, and I will be showing this in regards of new champion review as well, where he just doesn't really do well against many of the top defenders. There are quite a lot of bad matchups that you wouldn't necessarily think about him, and like, I don't know, Venom pulls, for instance, or a whole bunch of other champions where you don't want them to use, like, let's say, level 1, I don't know, go against Null, and again, it's going to turn out to be tricky. And he's very kind of like stressful and demanding champion to play, where you can have amazing fights against champions you wouldn't think he could do, but these fights also have like a million ways to go wrong, and for it to go wrong, only thing that needs to happen is AI not throwing a special attack for a split second. Again, I do think that with some tune-up, he would be much better with perhaps passive stacking taunts. Like, you know, we have taunt debuffs that stack on OG Spider-Man, which basically means that opponents will immediately, always, without fail, throw those special attacks, because there are so many of those taunt effect applies. I do think that you should change his permanent taunt debuff into something like a 5-second or 4-second taunt passive that can stack, and if you land the full combo or 3 hits on your opponent, there should be like 3 taunts expiring, just to make sure that, again, there's even higher chance for them to throw those special attacks. I do think slightly increased buff durations would help some other tune-ups, but as he stands right now, he's great fun to use. I just don't think he's great champion for the important things in the game. Like, moving on to my top 2, the 2 best champions in the new featured crystal. I think second spot belongs to Lady Deathstrike, and I think that a lot of people kind of sleep on Lady Deathstrike because Nimrod exists. But the reality is that Lady Deathstrike pretty much does everything that Nimrod does, or a lot of it anyways, and she unlike Nimrod, will also deal better with several of the peskiest mutants like Bishop and like Havoc. Now, then there are some other matchups, obviously some other classes where she can do, and her damage output is much more unassuming than Nimrod's. There is not that one big level 2 that completely nukes everything down. Her damage output is not bad at all, especially in longer fights. And even in shorter fights, her damage output is perfectly serviceable and acceptable. Ultimately, I do find a lot of value in Lady Deathstrike. She is one of those champions that, I would want to have as a 7-star, or I would want to rank up as a 6-star, potentially to rank 5, because she is extremely unique in her damage delivery method, because her rupture damage depends on her armor rating. That means that she's significantly less affected from some sort of buff damage fury nodes. And that's fine, because we have a ton of champions who do benefit from that greatly, namely, let's say, Nimrod or some other tech powerhouses. The greatest thing is that at the same time, if she's unaffected by Fury, she's very minorly inconvenienced by inequity masteries or by weaknesses or some many other kind of like damage or attack reduction effects. Because only thing that really matters is the armor rating. The better you play, the more you strike your opponent, the more passive armor you get, the more potent those ruptures are. And whilst you are in ferocity, you do gain attack rating. Again, it's a nice bonus. You're going to get slightly more damage, but it doesn't really stop you. So I think a lot of people haven't really kind of clued up on it yet and how valuable that is. There are not that many champions in a game who really do not care about weaknesses and stuff like that. It's similar to Omega Red's Death Spores, for instance, when we use them in long distance relationship meta. You could have 15 weaknesses on Omega Red, and yeah, your hit damage suffered greatly, but that's not where most of your damage comes from. It came from the Death Field and Omega Red and the DJ. And it's the same with Lady Deathstrike. And other than that, obviously completely basically invalidating any and all mutant class abilities, I think is tremendously valuable. I think she's one of the more overlooked champions. If you take a look at here, she will destroy virtually every mutant in the game and plenty of champions from other classes. Like APOC, done. Bishop, done. Some, I don't know, Colossus, done. Domino, done. What else is a good mutant? Defenders like Havoc, done. Iceman's like, okay, nah, you're gonna take that damage, but Sauron, done. Toad, done. Wolverine, Weapon X, done. So any potent mutant defenders, Lady Deathstrike will absolutely walk through, and much of other class champions as well. So I do like her a lot. And the best champion, I think, in the next feature is Silk. Now, Silk is quite high demand champion without doubt, as in like high skill required champion. You do need to get used to her, and admittedly, I still need to learn to utilize her better. But I do think she is one of the better recent additions in the game, and I think she's obviously an attacker, very little defensive value, but one of the most important things, unlike vast majority of the Spider-Verse heroes, she actually has good HP, and she's not squishy. So if we're gonna go to, if we are going to go to the Aunt May HP chart, you're gonna see that virtually all of the Spider heroes are in like the bottom, I don't know, 50. You can see all the Spider-Man here, and some of the worst health pools and a bunch of other stuff in the game. And Silk doesn't. Silk's fine, which is already like one very strong aspect. We finally have like some Spider heroes that feel like and play like Spider heroes, like very agile, very kind of like, flying around the screen and doing all the cool things, but actually have some health pool. And then her damage output is great, not a bad damage output at all. And she does have plenty of understated utility, like that slow in her SIG that also is capable of reversing regeneration is very powerful. And then we also have this massive evade that you can utilize to evade like all of the special attacks that are like blockable, like mangogs and whatnot. That is also tremendously helpful. Not to mention that she's pseudo buff immune, has like super fast paced playstyle, access to tons of debuffs. I do think that in the next featured crystal, she is the most useful champion overall. And if you take a look at all of the 2023 champions released thus far, I would put her in top 5 for sure. I would put her alongside, future Ant-Man, Kate, Absorbing Man, Lady Deathstrike, Silk. I think that is pretty much the top of the champs that we have in the game so far. So that is my ranking. Let me know what you guys think, and I will catch you guys later. Bye. Whoops. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information